Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, back and forth album review between myself, Joseph Fremming, and my good friend Paul Muad'Dib. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm feeling good as gold. AM gold, if you want to.
Oh, well, Paul, we're going to be, hanging down the street. Same old thing we did last week.
With El Goodo?
With El Goodo.
With El Goodo?
Ballad of El Goodo. Yeah, so this week we are going back into the well of your favorite band's favorite band. I snuck, I forget what the last one we did about, like, that was like this, but I just, off a hunch, Sparks was probably the last one we did. That was kind of like, never really knew about them, and then all of a sudden, like, everybody, music you grew up listening to were like huge fans of.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
I took a swing and decided to go on number one record by Big Star. Paul, what do you know about Big Star?
I know nothing about Big Star at all. Like, this is one of those ones where I didn't look into anything about it because I figured you knew more about them than I ever could.
I didn't know anything about him when I picked this. I just kind of knew like one person in it. So Big Star started in late 60s, early 70s by a guy named Chris Bell and his friend Andy Hummel and Jody Stevens. They were like this guys in their like late teens, early 20s, and I think it was like Memphis. They're in Memphis. And Chris Bell was a guy who was like really interested in music, and he was like, I guess, like a wonderkind and like being able to get like engineering music. Like it just came to him naturally. And you kind of hear it on the album because he produced it basically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
At 20 years old. So when you listen to like how this album's produced, keep that in mind. It's like a 20-year-old guy doing this.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And the last person in the band is Alex Chilton. Alex Chilton, you've probably heard his music. You just didn't know the name behind it. Alex Chilton was in a band called the Box Tops.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. So he wrote and sang the song The Letter, but give me a ticket for an aeroplane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he toured with them throughout the late 60s and left the band and relocated to Memphis where he hooks up with these guys. And it's so these are like really, it's really weird because these guys, so Chris Bell works at a studio run by Ardent Records.
Okay.
Ardent Records at this time takes an interest in what they're doing, gets them in the studio, and these guys just basically record it themselves. They have a producer on hand who was actually, he said he didn't hear any of the tracks before they brought him in. They were just that well organized in pre-production that they just didn't want to waste a lot of time in the studio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so these are like mostly like first, second, third takes.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah. And so this album comes along, and they're writing and recording it. At one point, they realize they don't even have a band name. Like they're just kind of like music dorks, or like just really into like the project, so they're not really thinking about how to sell it. So like one day they're like standing like outside the studio, and they look across the street, and there's a Big Star grocery store. So they just decided on Big Star.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And then they thought with like, kind of like, since that's kind of like a hubris thing to say, your band's called Big Star. They decided to go with the name Number One Record.
God.
Yeah. So this album, when it came out, great reviews across the board.
Okay.
Rolling Stone loved it. Cream loved it. They were like critical darlings. The problem is Ardent got into a working relationship with Stax Records.
Okay.
Stax is mostly known for R&B, and Stax wanted to reach out more of the rock market. And unfortunately for Big Star, they had the promotion, but they didn't have the distribution. They sold only 10,000 records.
Oh wow!
When it came out initially, I mean, and when you listen to at least for me, when I listened to the album, I'd assume it probably sold more than 10,000 records upon release.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
No, people just could not find it. They would play, like, college DJs would play, I forget what the single was, probably In the Street and maybe 13.
I was going to say 13. I was going to think.
Yeah. That was, people would hear it and they would actually ask the band, like, where do we find this record? And they had no idea, because that's all tied up with Stax and Ardent. And long story short, they did some shows, like a tour. They get back after Chris Bell. He's kind of like like I said, he's the engineer. He was like the kind of the visionary. This was his baby.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of has a mental breakdown.
Oh.
Big Star released four albums. They did one in like the late 90s, early 2000s. This is the only one with Bell on it. He kind of becomes like, this is like where it kind of goes like into like cliche, but it happens. He's kind of like a tragic figure. Yeah. At one point he wanted to destroy the master tapes for this, just because he was just so kind of like disappointed with, the sales, and, everybody's talking about Chilton, because Chilton was he was the name that sold all this. So he leaves the band and he kind of drifts until the late 70s. He dies at age 27 in a car accident.
He's part of the 27 Club.
Yes. Which is also the tragedy of that too, is at the time he just released a single, his first new music since this album. And he had a lot of other stuff in the can that gets released posthumously in the 90s, like about 10, 15 years after he died. He didn't even get to survive. He didn't live long enough to see that this band gets like a second look back in the 80s and 90s. So he put in that hard work and he didn't get to see the fruits.
Oh, God.
Unlike the other guys, So I'll talk about a little bit. So this doesn't sell. The band continues on after Bell. And, it's never just a big seller, even though they make the second album, Radio City, is also like really well done, well produced. And, they just didn't sell anything. And then it was in the late 70s, people like started taking notice. They're just somehow finding this album. The bands that we knew and grew up that ended up like being really inspired by this album and this band. The list would be, I'll keep it short, but it's REM, The Replacements. Replacements even have a song called Alex Chilton. Teenage Fan Club. Garbage covers 13 on one of their records. Elliott Smith.
Wow.
Yeah's covered Big Star. This is a band whose shadow kind of looms large for like a weird group of guys who made like a pretty good pop rock album.
Yeah. Wow. I would have had no idea. I would have had
I
no
watched
idea.
a documentary on them after,
That's honestly fascinating. Like, who'd have thought?
Yeah. And they had like, Chilton goes through a lot of weird things. Like he did like anti-music in the 80s with punk. Which is really just like, he had his problems too, man. But creative people typically have, they're a little off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
there's something that comes with that genius, right? There's something that comes with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul, let's start. Let's talk. What are your first thoughts on number one record?
Well, I feel bad for what I'm about to say, knowing that everyone loved this. There was quite a few times where I giggled listening to this album because it reminded me of Spinal Tap when they were doing the As the Flower People, what the Flower People say. There was a lot of the Flower People on this album for me. So these parts I was kind of giggling. I'm like, I wonder if Spinal Tap like knew of this band and took some of what they were doing.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure Michael McKean and what's his name? Christopher Guest.
Yes. Yeah.
Christopher Guest was like a big music nerd. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah, because I mean, like there's a couple of them, the India song, especially track 6.
I don't like that song.
That
was written by the bassist too,
and that was straight up to me, Flower People. Like I really, really was like, oh man, like they had to listen to this because you have like the sitar in there, and it's just like this hippie song, and something about like what was it, gin and tonics, and it was just kind of whatever.
And it's weird too because it kind of comes out of nowhere.
It comes out of nowhere
because it doesn't tonally fit. Like, like my complaint with this would be it's such a 70s sounding album, which is weird because this is like before this sound kind of took the 70s, like 3 or 4 years later. So it's strange that
it is like this is straight. Like, I could tell this was a 70s album, but yeah, you have a good point there. I didn't realize that this was 72. That sound didn't
71.
exist yet. 71. Excuse me, 71. That sound didn't exist yet.
No, like in the documentary, they're talking about the sound in 71. Yeah, and like another thing was going against Big Star was the sound was mostly like Led Zeppelin and like these big, like, Clapton and shit like that, where it's just like heavy guitar work and shit. And then you have these guys who are just like making this.
Yeah. So I mean, outside of that, like I said, like there's some parts I was just like, oh man, so that's so Spinal Tap, but that really was around the India song, which knowing that was written by the bassist, like the one track that was written by the bassist, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the one track.
The one track, because none of the other ones sound like it.
Yeah, I really don't like that song. It reminds me of a Richard Wright song from like the early Floyd.
Yeah.
Like, Remember a Day, where it's just like, oh, God, this is such a terrible fucking song.
Yeah.
Good thing Waters took over, man.
It wouldn't have gone well. I mean, I enjoy some of the Rick Wright stuff, but it's because it's small doses, right? It's a nice kind of like, oh, yeah, that's in there. But yeah, no, I don't know what Pink Floyd would have done had Waters not taken over. So, yeah, I mean... I have a theory, when it comes to covers, because let's talk about In the Street, because that's obviously the one that
everybody will know because of that 70s show.
Right. And who covered it for that 70s
Cheap
show?
Trick.
It was Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
Okay, which is interesting, because I'm not a huge Cheap Trick fan. I like some of their stuff. I have a theory when it comes to covers. Unless the original is amazing, typically the version you're going to like the most is the version you hear first.
Yep, and that's, for me, the 70s show version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's a good song, but Cheap Trick improved it.
Yeah.
There was just little subtle things in there that I was like, oh, okay. And then but they didn't do the things. Like, it was very... where Cheap Trick will kind of change it up a little bit, like, get a little bit more rockier with it or do this.
Yeah.
It was
added We're All Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of missing some of that stuff when I was listening to it.
I love that riff, though.
Oh, it's such a great riff.
Such a good riff.
It is. It's an it's such an amazing riff. Yeah. So the song 13.
Yeah, I kind of want to, before we get to 13, I just want to, for me though, like the rock songs, they're all right to me. Where they shine is when they're acoustic.
Yes.
There's so we'll get into 13. I love 13, by the way, but there's another, we'll talk about it, but there's another song that's very Elliott Smith.
Which one?
Give Me Another Chance.
Oh, yes. That's right.
It just sounds like straight out of XO.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about 13, because I love this song so much.
Yeah. It's a great song. I have to admit, it was a little creepy. I'm going to give it just a little. It's a great song, but I got My Sharona vibes at first, because I'm like, how old is this guy?
Yeah, but then you're also, it's from the perspective of 13.
Right, and I caught that on like the second listen, like the second or third listen. I was like, oh, okay. Because at first when I was listening to it, I was driving around, I was kind of, I'm just kind of absorbing what's there, and I'm like, that's creepy. Let me walk you home from school. Wait a minute.
Yeah. It's once you realize it's from the narrator as like a kid, first love. I guess it meets the girl at the age 13.
Yeah,
I like it though.
It's a gorgeous song. It's
gorgeous. I love the guitar work. Again, This is like the production kind of like floored me, because this is a 20-year-old and you're hearing. It's not often you hear all the strings on a guitar in the mix.
Right. No, 100%. I'm glad you said that, because you miss it a lot of times, especially in modern music. Yeah,
you just hear those guitars, and it's fucking beautiful, and it's like. There's also a lot of sadness on this album. Did you notice that?
I did notice that. There's a lot of sadness, and once
it kicks
again,
off a feel where it's just like wants to die.
Yeah, and there was it Don't Lie to Me? A lot of bitter in that one. I noticed this. This is something. This comes from, I think, me being older and all that kind of stuff. I noticed a lot of what you find, I think, in bands like these, and it's a lot of the that codependent "I need you" type of thing.
Yeah.
Throughout the album. Yeah. So
that's just like I can't even say that's of the time, because people are still fucking like that.
Right.
And especially in your early 20s, you're kind of a I was at least a mess.
Yeah. We all were a mess, right? And I think that's
kind of leaned on the person you're with a little too heavy,
right? And I say that again because now I'm older and I kind of listen to it and I'm like, oh my god, that was like, you're nobody unless somebody loves you. Jesus fucking Christ! Can we get over it?
Yeah.
India
but
song.
The 70s, it either went that way or Robert Plant singing about hobbits or fucking anal sex. He wants to be your backdoor man.
Yeah.
In Through the Outdoor, Paul.
Through the outdoor.
In Through the Outdoor.
In Through the Outdoor, my man. Oh, and again, getting to the India song. Oh Christ! Like I said, I saw Harry Shearer. It like literally in my head, I saw Harry Shearer just staring stoned into the camera.
And that's the thing, is like it tonally doesn't fit with like what else is going on, what leads into, and it's another weird thing too. Is it starts off with a lot of rock, but like the second side is just like almost this downbeat melancholy shit. But,
yeah,
I'm not against, because I listen to a lot of sad bastard music, and Give Me Another Chance. Although it's kind of codependent and all that, but I can still I was there at one point, so I can relate to it from a nostalgia, I guess. Not even nostalgia, just from being there at that point in my life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Like one of like When My Baby's Beside Me. Right, that was one of those songs where I was like listening to the lyrics, and I was like, "Yep, yep. I don't need my doctor. I don't need my shrink."
Yeah, no, that's another like telling thing, and that's
which I thought was interesting. So I'm like, this is in the 70s.
Shrink. Like, you're saying you have a shrink in the 70s. That was like a big
no
taboo.
Yeah, huge taboo. But I thought it was funny because
the fact they're saying this on an album in 1971.
Yeah, and I want to get one of the things that bother me is like, because my baby's beside me, I don't worry. When my baby's beside me, all I know, and I'm like, all you know what? Like all you know what? Like, tell me what you know. And yeah, no, that's a good song. And what was My Life Is All Right. I don't know. That one was kind of blended. Then you got Give Me Another Chance. And that's, as you talked about, there's certain bands that shine when they do their slow songs. And this is definitely, I think, one of them, because Give Me Another Chance is a great song. But it's definitely a song about he pissed off someone. Like someone's got a temper.
Yeah, but again, like I've been there. Like, I've not been abusive, but like I was like a real shithead at 21. So
we all were. Anyone who says they weren't a liar.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I just the arrangement and the vocals. I was sitting there, I'm like, I think this is where Elliott Smith got some of this idea with like cadence in his vocals and
yeah, and lyrically, just it's a down song. It's a down song.
Yeah,
100%. I think so. I mean, I can definitely hear some of it. Try Again. I felt like the first half of the album, to me, minus the India song, was the stronger half.
Yeah.
Which is intended at that time. It's 1971. You had an A side and a B side.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, like why they had the 1 minute song at the very end, I don't know.
Well, the weird thing with the 1 minute song is I want to hear more of it.
Yeah.
Because of how the vocals it's really catchy. And I actually do really like Watch the Sunrise. I thought that was kind of a nice little, beautiful little pop, whatever.
It is. Now, the one thing I have to say when I was listening to this whole album, and again, this is, I think, because it's 1971, this is not a hard rock album, right?
No.
And you had some of the slower stuff. I was thinking, like, this is, I'm sure, I honestly thought, I'm like, I bet if I bought some of those AM Gold records that used to be on TV all the time in the 80s and 90s, I would hear a bunch of these songs on there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't sell enough copies for these to appear on those, Paul.
Right. But I honestly, I'm assuming, I'm like, man, this is AM Gold all over the place. It's not quite soft rock, but it's soft enough where I could see why this didn't. I honestly thought these just weren't like strong enough, like rocky enough songs to get played on rock radio. And I kind of thought, and this isn't enough of a soft stuff to get played on like the classic rock stations. I'm really surprised that like I've never heard any of these songs, especially 13, or even In the Street, on like the oldie stations growing up.
Yeah, because nobody listened to this band in the 70s, and that's like a lot of issues you brought up. They're not really hard rock, they're not really soft rock. They've kind of fall in between.
Mm-hmm.
It's just and I'm kind of glad because if they ended up on AM Gold or whatever, I probably wouldn't enjoy these because the songs are really catchy.
They're very catchy.
And they're very, well written, like well produced, well performed. It's like, and typically, like, this is not the music I personally go for.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not me either.
You've noticed, like, I don't know if you're a little surprised by like my choice with this album, but I took a shine to it. I think I see the appeal for like, and it should have sold more than 10,000 records.
It should have sold more than 10,000. Honestly, I thought you were going to come to me and be like, man, I didn't realize I picked hippie crap. Knowing
a lot of it's
knowing
too,
you.
It's if for me, a lot of it felt Midwestern somehow. Like In the Street. I mean, like just us growing up, like that was like your boring teenage life.
100%.
Just getting in a car and fucking getting high and
driving down Division.
Driving down Division. Yeah. Well, you really wish you had a joint then, like a song like 13, Ballad of El Godo. Like a lot of it is just kind of like feels very Midwestern, but it's southern.
I didn't get that vibe.
So this is a southern rock album.
Yeah, when you told me they were from Memphis, I'm like, that's a shocker. I figured this was a Detroit band. I figured this was a Chicago band, something in the Midwest. Like completely, you nailed the Midwest vibe to it. Yeah, I really thought that this would have been one of those two. Like I really, really thought. I honestly thought it was Detroit.
Yeah, like I had no idea when I was watching the documentary. I was like, Memphis? Like, what? I was very confused by a lot of. That's what I love about the misconceptions when we go in with a band. Like when you thought Sparks were British.
I totally thought Sparks were British, and I thought it was made. I thought it was a recent album because it was so far ahead of its time.
Yeah, and this I assume, like you, it's probably Detroit or something like that. Maybe LA.
Maybe LA, but I really thought Detroit or Chicago.
Yeah, because it just feels very Midwestern. Like the lyrical content is just small town bullshit life. Mm-hmm. There's another reason I kind of I took a shine to this album. It's like, I remember being bored all the time. Doing there was a time shit with my friends.
There was a time we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
We come from that. From that genre where we didn't have cell phones, so you have to stop. I was
actually a lot happier when I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, I had a cell phone like when they started coming. Like before there was the flip phone, like we all had the Nokia, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And
I think I was about 17 and I got rid of it. I didn't get another cell phone until I was 20. I didn't get one for 3 years because my mindset was, if I didn't call you that morning to do something with you, I didn't want to talk to you.
Why I didn't get a cell phone until I was 25.
Yeah, I waited till I was about 20 to get one again. I took a 3-year break from it because I was like, man, I don't want to be bothered. Like if I wanted to call you that morning or get in touch with you that morning, I would have, because it still wasn't like, texting wasn't a thing yet. You know what I mean? It was still, you just talk to someone on a fucking phone. And I was like, why the fuck am I going to give someone the ability to contact me anytime? Like I'm busy. I got shit to do.
I'm still upset whenever people get a hold of me when I don't want to be gotten a hold of. And I just basically, my phone's just a glorified tablet at this point. I barely use it for an actual phone.
Most people don't. Like, the other day I got, we talked about off air. I got that new job and I was driving home and I had a several mile drive. And I was like, one of my buddies, I was like, I know he's home. So I gave him a call. And like when we first started talking, I could totally tell he didn't want to be on the phone. He was like, and then, as we started talking, he loosened up and we were fine. But like, I could totally tell he's like, because I'm sure nobody calls. I mean, unless I have a need for it, I text.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times?
I feel personally insulted when my phone rings.
You and I have been doing this podcast. Have been doing, we did, the Twin Peaks.
Yep.
How many times have you and I talked on the phone? Talked on the phone? Never. Right? We message each other what we need to know and what we're going to do. We don't talk on the phone. I would never.
Well, we have each other's numbers. We don't even text. We just messenger.
Right. I mean, if I got a call from you, I would think somebody died.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Yeah, it's like fuck.
So
yeah, now I kind of wish I was 1971 and I was born in a car.
Now, one thing I do want to bring up that we talked a little bit about it was some of the lyrics, and this is a product of the 70s, I think, and the 60s and the 70s, and it's even now. I mean, we listened to a little bit with I felt with the last one we did with Miley. Very repetitive. Some of these songs are very repetitive. Like, Don't Lie to Me. It's a very repetitive song lyrically. I think at that time, it's just what that sign of the times. But that is to me, it's just one of those things I'm listening to. I'm like, yep, okay. Kind of like, again, when my baby's beside me, a lot of the same stuff over and over. And it's kind of like, okay, got it the first, and I think that's just me being older and being like, yep, got it the first time.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because like Don't Lie to Me just feels like more of a jam than an actual song.
Right. No, I'll give you that. And I think it's because I also have an affinity for concept albums, which a lot of them don't have a lot of repetition, right? Like when you think about when we listen to The Lamb on Broadway, there wasn't a lot of repeats with the choruses and the verses and things like that. They're all trying to tell a story, trying to tell something different. So lyrically, I find it a little bit more interesting, but this is just what pop is. It's why it's poppy, because anyone can sing along and you're going to know the lyrics by the end of the fucking song.
Yeah. I mean, look at Paul McCartney's career.
Oh, Christ. Do we have to? Do we really have to? Do we need to talk about Ebony and Ivory? Don't forget that happened.
Don't forget the Michael Jackson,
that debacle. God, we're going to have to do a Paul McCartney or a Michael Jackson album, probably a Paul McCartney album, or Wings, just to talk about that fiasco at some point, because that was a shit show.
Well, McCartney was on Thriller, man, so.
Oh, that's true. McCartney was on Thriller. That's right. Yeah, so we could do Thriller. I mean, there is that. Yes. I forgot about that. I forgot he was on Thriller. Yeah. What was that? The Girl Is Mine?
Yeah.
The Girl Is Mine? Yeah.
Terrible song.
Not a great song.
Talk about a guy who peaked in 1969.
I just read an article that he apparently put out a bunch of music under a fake name, and I was like, I don't care. I just don't care.
He's been doing that. He did that in the 90s too. I forget what the name of it was. Like, he put out DJ music. It was really bad. Clapton did the same thing, like weird DJ music under a pseudonym, and I was just like, I don't care. I don't even like Clapton when he's just playing guitar. So,
but overall, I mean, like I said, I giggled some of it because I was like, especially the India song. Like, I cannot take that song seriously.
No, I don't think anybody takes that seriously, Paul.
I don't think you can take that song seriously. It's just, it is. I mean, even some of the riff, I'm like, I know those guys had to steal it from the song. Like, they had to have stolen for the Flower People from that song. Like, So if you're interested in what the origins of the Flower People, listen to the India song, because I guarantee you it came from it. Like, if Christopher Guest, if I ever had an interview with Christopher Guest and he said no, it wasn't, I'd call him a fucking liar to his face.
It's India song, and all you need is love. That's the Flower Children song.
Yep, that's Flower Children. You just combine the two.
Yep.
So, I guess, I don't know. I mean, this is interesting to me. I had no idea. I would have not thought, because again, we talked about the production, and like I said, when I heard 13, I thought it was kind of creepy. But even realizing this is someone in their 2021, I really thought this was an established group in their 30s.
Yeah, no. These guys are all in their 20s. Chilton was the only one who actually had experience, but he joined the Box Tops, I think, at 16.
Wow.
So by the time, I think, he was 21, 22 when they did this album. Yeah, they were all pretty young.
That's incredible, honestly. Again, it gives
Imagine
me
what we were doing at 21. We weren't doing this.
No, we weren't. No, we weren't. I was recording music, but I wasn't anywhere good at this, and obviously it didn't go I wasn't good at it because I didn't get a fucking career out of it, so good for them.
Well, their career didn't really go too far either. Again, that's the distribution issues, and again, it's kind of like a shitty. You can have, and this is another one of those things. You can have all the ingredients for what should be a successful band, because by all means, even is kind of dated and stuff. Some of this sounds like it should have been a bigger album than it was.
100%.
But it just shows how tough this industry is. That you could put out an album like this
and not get
and still not.
Which is insane, because this really does. Like I said, I really felt like this. I was I guarantee if I go through AM Gold, because I was actually thinking about it, of going through AM Gold, and seeing there's tracks from this album on there.
Because there's songs that feel like they should be hits.
Yeah, 100%. Well, again, In the Street, 13, Give Me Another Chance, even Feel, I Could See My Baby Beside Me. That should have been a hit. Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah, it's just that, yeah. And so, took a while, like once like the alternative bands in the 90s and, they started, covering Big Star and talking about him. And then that kind of gave them a second wind, if you will. And they toured and all the way up until Chilton's death, I think in 2010.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. Like I said, yeah, this should have been. I was assuming this was a hit, and it just never was on my radar because it wasn't, as we talked about, wasn't hard rock, but it wasn't really soft rock. So I just assumed it was just never on my radar. That was never on my parents' radar.
It was only on the music critics' radar, man.
Yeah, well, 10,000 albums. Again, that sucks. And yet, fucking the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton had to return 300 million, and these guys couldn't get 10,000. That sucks. That fucking sucks.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not in that industry. It seems quite vexing.
Well, and I imagine now they would have, like, if the situation in the 70s is what it was now, where you could get better self-distribution, I bet this would have taken off.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially in the 60s and 70s, if the label and whatever decided not to print, there was no guarantee they're going to print your fucking album.
Nope. There was no guarantee. And again, like this band it was suddenly cult, and like, REM and the Replacements would talk about them in interviews, and people were like, who the fuck is Big Star? Like, what are these guys talking about? Like, the Bangles covered a track off their second album.
Wow.
Yeah. Matthew Sweet is like a huge fan. Like,
that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So it was just like, a lot of like these alternative bands then coming into the 90s were just, praising it. And then people started, the CD reissues come and people were like, oh, I'll give it a shot, fucking Garbage covered it or whatever.
Well, it's crazy to me that they picked this song, In the Streets for that 70s show.
Yeah, and they used the song 13 for the series finale.
I heard that. Yeah. I mean, I be honest with you, I got into that 70s show way later. So
I never saw the finale. I just saw the YouTube clip. It worked.
I'll have to check it out,
like
because
the whole Donna Eric thing. So
yeah, I think that was the other thing. When I watched it, and then when Eric left in the last season, I watched like 3 or 4 episodes and I stopped watching.
Honestly, I didn't even get that far.
Yeah, I got to the
point where like Red has the heart attack and Eric's home.
Yes,
I was just like, Kelso's a cop, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, that was terrible. That was terrible. Kelso being a cop. That was awful.
I just lost all interest in it. So yeah, I don't even think I could go back and rewatch the whole thing just to get to that finale. I just saw the clip of 13 being used. It's like, that was a very well done use of another our song for this show, and called it good.
I'll have to check that out. I'll look at the clip when we're done here. But hey, at least it was better than that 80s show.
With Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, God. That show was awful.
Oh, good thing he landed on his feet, huh? Longest running live action sitcom and going on now.
Yeah, it is the longest running Always Sunny, isn't it?
Yep.
Such a good show.
Yeah.
So anyways, I came in blasting. So I guess, getting the recommendations, I would recommend it. It's definitely something to check out, because knowing now that it never was big, and understanding why, like, I didn't know any of the tracks off of it, never heard any of it. And given that it's a 1971 album and that sounds like it's a late 70s album is incredible. Like if your history
sounds better than albums being made today. That's shocking.
It does, but it still has that. I don't want to give the audience. It definitely has a 70s feel to it, though. Like
it has a 70s feel, but like I'm saying, like how it's engineered.
Oh yeah, it's
like
great.
Just like the sound, it's like it sounds crisp.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't get a lot of. You get a lot of muddied stuff,
which is crazy considering it was what you said 2 or 3 takes.
Yeah, 2 or 3 takes.
Jesus Christ, these guys are talented.
Yeah, they came in prepared. They kind of like what the Clash did with London Calling, just practice the songs before you go in the studio, so you don't have to be wasting a lot of time and money.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart. So what about you? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I really like this album, so I will recommend it. I will recommend The Big Star.
Yeah, I will. I will recommend it. Just skip the India song.
Yeah, it's well, if you want a good laugh.
Yeah, because I chuckled. I did every time that song came on. I listened to this album several times, so that says something for it too. Like I listened to it beyond my normal 3 listens. But every time the India song came on, man, I laughed out loud. I was like, people in the driving next to me had to think I was nuts because I was just laughing like a crazy man at nothing.
Yeah.
So, Joe, what is going on with the Joe Down?
Well, we just released today. Me and Brown wrapped up our adventures in Forks, Washington with the Twilight series. We watched the last one.
Oh,
Brown
no.
was very mad, but I've been torturing him with those movies for 5 years, and it had to come to an end. I can find other terrible franchises for him to sit through.
Oh, God.
Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
What, CGI babies don't... It's perfectly normal, Paul.
I don't understand how Twilight became a phenomenon. Like, that's one of those things. Like, I understand Harry Potter. I understand, but this should have gone the route of Percy Jackson when it came to films. Like, should have just stopped. Should have just said no.
Yeah, I don't understand the appeal. I think I sat through all of them, and I still don't understand why they're popular.
Yeah, I mean, what was the Rotten Tomatoes for it?
This one, I think, was like 38%.
Ugh.
It wasn't, critics didn't like these movies, Paul.
Well, what did the audience think?
39% was for the last one.
What did the audience think of it, though?
I don't give a shit. I don't go for the audience score. Audiences are idiots. They they're wanting to restore the Snyderverse for those shitty DC movies. So,
oh, God, can they just stop with that? DC, you fucked up. Like, just give up. The audience score was 70%, by the way. It was 70%. Jesus Christ. You know where DC shines? It's in their animations.
Yep.
Their animation ones are top fucking notch. They should have just stuck with that. Like, just stick with that because you guys do really good work when it comes to the animation stuff.
They rushed that shit too. It's so stupid. And they didn't have a good. When they put the eggs in the basket with Zack Snyder, you knew it wasn't gonna.
I don't understand these people, these Zack Snyder apologists. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get the appeal of Zack Snyder. I don't understand it. I don't think the guy's that great.
No, he can make a movie look cool, but he doesn't understand the characters.
Right.
He just doesn't. Right. He doesn't understand storytelling. Like, I just noticed the new Batman movie coming out. He's not part of that or whatever, but it's coming in at like 3 hours long. Like, these fucking superhero movies are now 3 hours long.
I know.
3 hour long movies used to be a special event type of thing. Remember, like,
oh yeah,
Schindler's List. It's like Schindler's 3 hours, List. And it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting idiots in rubber suits. Like, everything just hurts all the time, Paul. I swear to God.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will say one thing about the Schneider Cut. And I will say one bit of praise. is at least, it took it's not really praise though. It took 4 hours to make that movie make sense.
That's not a praise, man.
That's not a praise.
That's shit writing.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at like the original cut though, that movie makes no sense at all. You're just like, what the fuck is what? Like how that wasn't canned. And like, what the shit is beyond me. But then they have to, put out a Schneider cut and make a 4 hour. And remember, he had to bring people back and do shoots. Remember, Warner Brothers let him do reshoots to shoot more shit for it. So he had to make it a 4 hour long fucking movie to have it make sense. That's awful. That's terrible.
He's terrible at writing. He's terrible at editing. It's just really just awful. Like,
now let's talk. I want to get back a little bit there because I want to bring up Dune, for example. Right now, Dune's based on a book, and there's a lot of shit in that book and a lot of things you need to know. The source material itself is long, so it warrants a longer, you got to have the book, right? I mean, you want to hit everything that's in the book, the things that make the fans want it. There was no Batman versus Superman book.
No.
It was made up.
It was called The Dark Knight Returns, and that was not as long as that.
That was a graphic novel, but yeah, it wasn't as long as that, and it would have been a better fucking if they just taken that and made that a fucking movie.
Well, they already did the animated one, and that was good. So.
That was good. The animated one. Again, that's where DC shines. It's in their animation. Just get HBO Plus, watch the fucking cartoons, and be done. Like, Jesus Christ, like, give up.
It's just
and I heard fans are getting all pissed off because they're thinking that Flash is gonna retcon the Snyderverse, and let it.
Yeah,
it sucked.
It's what they call a soft reboot. They're just going to be rebooting a lot of the franchise because the Snyderverse sucked. Well, nobody liked it.
And if you're a fan of the comics, Flashpoint happens where everything got fucking rebooted because of Flash. Like, it's canon. It's something that happens in the comics, so get over it. Regardless if it was good or not, Flashpoint was going to happen, which was going to retcon everything anyway. So get over it.
Yeah, might as well retcon this fucking
garbage
shit pile of sadness. And
it's a sadness ball. It's a sadness ball.
They're just... Wonder Woman was okay. Wonder Woman 89 sucked.
89 was terrible. Or 80 was it 84, 89, whatever the fuck it was. It was terrible.
It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
It was awful.
Shazam was all right, but like, Aquaman was okay. Like, they're not really making movies. Like, I liked that. Like, my highest praise. It's all right, I guess, for their best.
Yeah, I mean, I did like Man of Steel. I did like that. But a lot of people didn't. But I thought it was a good take. Although I didn't like Kevin Costner. Like, I didn't like how the dad was like, "Don't do anything,"
Let those kids drown.
Yeah, let those kids drown. That's not what he fucking like. That was terrible. Yeah. So all right. So you guys did Breaking. Did you guys have anything in the pipeline then?
Yeah, we're doing Cannibal the Musical next.
Oh God, yes.
The sky is blue and all the leaves are green. My heart is filled as a baked potato.
Fudge packer?
Let's build a snowman.
Man, how did he tap dance? You're asking that now. I love Cannibal the Musical. I saw that because I was a big Trauma fan. Huge Trauma fan. And I saw that before I even knew who Trey Parker and Matt Stone were. Because I think I saw that almost 20 years ago. Like, yeah, because the only way it got distribution was through Trauma, because no one would pick it up, and Trauma did for them. Awesome, love that movie. Have you seen? Obviously, you've seen it. Has Joe seen it?
I think so. I used to own it. Like, the commentary is great because they just get hammered.
Yeah, don't they go to a strip club and come back?
I think so. Yeah.
I think they go to a strip club and come back. Yeah, I think they do. I think they're like, let's pause the recording, and then they come back and they're all 10 shades of hammered.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love that movie. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to that one. All right, Joe. Well, I'm going to give you a choice of number 1 through 4. And this is going to decide our fate, buddy. 1 through 4. 5, you dick.
3.
Ooh, okay. That's just. I'm going to tell you right now. This is probably the best pick of them all. Well, there may be another one that would have been really good. We are going to do the Australian band, The Vines, self-debut album, Highly Evolved, from 2002.
Oh, one of the bands.
One of the bands, yes.
The Vines, The Strokes.
The Hives, yes.
The Hives.
It all came out around the same time.
All garage rock bands, all sounding the same. The White Stripes.
The White Stripes. Yeah, there was a big boom of the bands, yes, at the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it came after all the punk bands with numbers in their title.
That's true.
Blink-182 and Sum 41.
From 41. Yeah.
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 The late 90s, early 2000s were really fucking terrible.
They were great. But this will be the debut album, Highly Evolved, by the Vines.
All right.
So that is what we're gonna do.
Sounds good to me.
You're so lucky, dude. Air Supply was on that list, man. You are so lucky.
We have against Air Supply.
Fuck you. Don't even pretend you like Air Supply.
I'm all alone.
I'm still lost without you.
Yeah. Sorry if I have 2 ears and a heart.
The singer looks like Beavis when he grew up. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, just know that there's going to be Air Supply in the future.
That's not with me.
It's not with me. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. Oh, do you want to take us out?
No.
Joe Friend.